three, get it.
All right, can we have a conversation? Today we have a guest, really been here before, and he has written a book, and the book is called Sentence to Life. And our guest today is Curtis Roberts. Curtis Roberts has spent some time in San Quentin, and we're going to talk about his time there and some of the other prisons in the state of California and his journey uh, with this thing called Three Strikes. Curtis Roberts, thank you for the show and thank you for coming. I thank you for your book, Sentence to Life: The Path to Redemption and Freedom for Prisoners E-25212. Show them your book. Here's a copy of it, and you can show them as well.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting book, and I think the viewers should hear this story. And there's a lot of people that have experienced this, but your story is a little different because it's dealing with something where you had sound like they gave you 50 years uh, for something that was a very petty crime. Uh, Come on and talk to us about your journey and how this journey has started from the beginning to the end. And I'll ask you some questions, along the way.
Again, yeah. Hi, thank you, Dr. P, and thank you for everybody that's joining. My name is Curtis Roberts, and I did do a total of 29 years in state prison. And the sentence I was given under California Three Strikes was 50 years to life. And the final crime that I did commit was I did a snatch and grab. I stole $40 from a cash register. It was sitting on top and no weapon. Just grabbed it and walked out. And I told the judge that I did it. And he said, under the California Penal Code, he had no recourse but to give me the sentence of 50 years to life, as well as charge me $10,000 restitution.
Now, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that on the far as the restitution, the $10,000, it took me 21 years to pay that off. But they got every penny. I paid that off, and I was really proud of myself with that achievement.
Now, with that $10,000, you were making 15 cents an hour.
The highest pay I got was right there toward the end, and I got 32 cents an hour. Now, mind you, the California took 55% of any money I got, whether it's through my inmate pay or if Dr. P, you sent me $100, the state of California took $55 and left me with 45 until they got their 10,000.
Mm, mm. Now, with let's kind of start back on how that happened. So, you first started off. Let's talk about your childhood a little bit
Mhm.
because it was something that got you to this place. And reading your book is spoke about. I guess your mom and dad, they separated. I think you might have been 4. Then they got back together and they stayed together until you was like 8, and then they separated again. Is that correct?
That's close. That's close to the truth. Yeah. And when they separated the second time, that was the final. That was the last time um, I saw my mom in a long, long, long time.
So your mom basically abandoned you. She just left. I mean, just picked up and left, and you never saw her again. No warning or anything, right?
No warning, no nothing. Yeah.
And so this left you with your father and your siblings. Is that correct?
My father, my brother, and by this time, one of the other siblings had ran away. My oldest sister, and I left with one sister and my oldest brother. So yeah.
And so, I'm trying to paint the picture because your childhood was not uh, the typical childhood. So, as that happened, then I think I'm reading in the book. It said that your dad tried to drink some ant poison or something.
Yeah, he attempted suicide, um, and he did drink ant poison.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he didn't try. He did, and he wanted to check out. He didn't want to face up to um, what he was doing.
And then meanwhile, a time you had to deal with the fact that your sister tried to commit suicide. She took some pills and tried to commit suicide as well, right?
Yes, yes.
And then leading up to that, I can imagine, feeling abandoned by your mom not being there, and you normally you're at that age, you need your mom, and she's not there. Your dad is trying to, commit suicide or whatever, and then there was some sexual things that happened that your dad tried to sexually abuse you. Is that correct?
Dad and oldest brother,
And
or
oldest brother.
or I don't. Well, there's only one brother, my older brother. Yeah, not tried, but they did,
Hmm.
and um, I want to make a comment about that, if you don't mind.
No,
That
go ahead.
in my mind, in my emotional state, that the sexual abuse was better than what my mom did. My mom just flat out left, and that left a scar where it was. I don't know if I've ever healed from that.
Hmm.
But the sexual abuse, as awful and disgusting as it is, it was still that they wanted me,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that was a value that I thought that was very important to me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I didn't know that at that point it was wrong.
Yeah, and that's what I'm reading in the book, and you was talking about even after that happened, your dad abandoned you and he left you.
Well, when the social workers started getting word, because I was going to school all dirty and just I was a mess, and the social workers started coming around the house and they started asking questions, and that's when they shipped me off.
Mm.
So they wanted to cover their tracks.
Hmm. So now you have no mother, you have no father. You're being sent to different people's houses. You're living on couches. Uh, you know, kind of walk me through that scenario.
I mean, it was exactly as you said. I was sent to a cousin's house. I was sent to a friend's house. I ended up sleeping on the sister that ran away. I was ended up sleeping on her couch, in a one bedroom apartment. So I'm in this couch, and I'm trying. I'm trying to go to school. I'm trying to live life and just do the best I could. Um, yeah, this is just the way it was. I didn't. I My parents didn't want me.
How old were you at this time?
Uh, Sleeping on my sister's couch were my high school years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, beyond all of that and the scars and the hurt and the pain, somehow you were still able to manage to graduate from high school. So tell me how that.
You know what the reason why I got to graduate high school is because of this. Because in my mind, in my childlike mind, I thought if I was perfect, they would come back and want me, meaning my mom and dad.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm a child. I want my mom and dad. I
Hmm.
do. I didn't care about all that stuff. I just wanted my mom and dad. And so I remember my first 3 years in high school at Sequoia High School there in Redwood City. I didn't miss not one class, nothing. I was trying to be this perfect student. I didn't get straight A's, but for what I could do, I was the best at it.
Mm.
I thought they would come back.
So you were still trying to get that approval. You wanted to please them. You wanted to make sure you did right, because in your mind you were thinking that it was something you did wrong, and that if you could correct whatever it was that you did wrong, then perhaps they would have you come back home.
100%.
And now with this, because we always, and I talk about this fatherhood piece, and so of course, mother is very important, but with growing up as a young man and needing that love and affection from your dad as well, and just that approval and that affirmation, what happened when you didn't have that?
I think what happened was that I finally reached a point where I realized that I needed to shut off my emotions. And the way I chose to do that was by drug use.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I do want to point a picture, and I won't jump. I won't jump here, but I want to tell you that the fact that I wasn't able to please my dad sexually, I wasn't able to please my brother sexually, played a huge role of what happened later in prison. Huge.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that. So there's some guests that just joined us. I just want to let you know, welcome to Can We Have a Conversation? Our guest is Curtis Roberts, and he has written a book called Sentenced to Life, The Path to Redemption and Freedom. And he had this journey where he had to go through, and he got charged for 3 strikes for a petty crime that he committed. And so go ahead and tell me, so now that we've gotten to that place where you weren't able to please them sexually, they've abused you, your mom wasn't there, you felt, like you didn't understand why they didn't want you, why they didn't want to be there. Then you started using drugs, and I think it was that somebody had given you some cocaine or something, and it was in the truck, but you didn't know how to use it. And come on, tell me the story.
Well, it was my soon-to-be wife's brother, which I didn't know that he was a cocaine dealer, drug dealer. I didn't know that. And I remember my soon-to-be wife, she kept saying, "You got to stay away from my brother. He's no good." But I didn't understand all that. But anyways, let me fast forward here. He gives me a 0.5 gram of cocaine, and he's like, "Here, try this stuff." And I didn't know what to do with it. I leave it in. I'm working for Arrowhead Water at this point. And so I put it in the glove box. I don't know what to do with this stuff. So I say to one of the fellow route drivers, and I say, "Hey, I got this stuff called cocaine. Do you happen to know how to use it?" Oh my gosh, he's like, "Meet me over here." I'll tell you exactly. And that's where it started, right there. That was the birth of it. And I remember, next thing you know, these route drivers are starting to give me their money, and I'm going to my brother-in-law, and I'm here all this money, and I'm getting all this cocaine for these fellow route drivers.
And so now you're getting to the place where you're addicted to the drug. You really don't have any, boundaries or anything. You're just kind of free. You're working, but you really haven't had that real foundation or anything, and so you spin off in a way that now you don't have the money to pay for the drug. And so now this is when you started committing crimes, where you started stealing for the drugs.
Yes.
And so your first offense was?
I drove through a Nagel's fast food restaurant. This is in 1986, I think it was. No weapon. And I demanded the money, and I got $76. I even told the lady at the window, "I won't hurt you. I'm just trying to get drugs." And and the crazy thing about it is, I was in a company vehicle, and I wasn't the smartest criminal, but when I got caught, I told the judge I did it. I said, my attorney's telling me to plead not guilty. I don't get that. I did it.
Yeah, that was the thing that I thought was really interesting when I read your book, was because they were telling you do not plead guilty, but you went ahead and pleaded guilty anyway. Uh, and so you didn't think you were going to get the crime you had. I guess you just wanted to tell the truth. Is that right?
Well, I wanted to tell the truth, of course. You know, I don't know. Sometimes I think it was it. Dr. P, I honestly think at some point in time, I wanted somebody to help me, or somebody to want me, or somebody just to come into my life and give me something, some stability. But telling the truth was just something in my makeup. If I did it, I'll tell you. If I didn't do it, I'll tell you that too.
And so that was the first one. And then the second one, I think you ended up buying some cocaine.
Yeah, and this is the one I always like to share with the kids. When I speak to the kids. So the second one is I went to prison. That was the first time I went to prison, and it was for a crime I didn't do. But here's what I say to the kids. What put me in that place to get charged with a crime that I didn't do? What put me there? And here's what put me there. I bought $20 worth of cocaine, and I got arrested. The cops swooped in on me, caught me red-handed. I'm busted. Now they take me to jail. I'm sitting in the jail, and the detective comes in and says, we're charging you with 2 counts of armed robbery. Well, at this point, you know, because I'm still pretty naive, but I kind of snicker at it because I'm like, well, I didn't do that. I don't got to worry about that. You know, and I'm one of these people. I, as naive as I am, innocent people do not go to prison. They don't. That doesn't happen until it happened to me. I mean, they even had fingerprints. And this prosecutor was so good, she was able to beat fingerprints.
And so they had no fingerprints of you. They had a witness that testified that it was not you. And they still tried you for the crime.
Well, not only that, not only did they have the single sole witness of this who was robbed at this gas station, he says, I never said Curtis did it. I just said this is what the robber looked like if he was taller, heavier, brown eyes, dirty brown hair. It was Easter Sunday of 1989, that day this crime took place. It was my daughter's very first Easter. We were at our in-laws' house. So I have 3 alibi witnesses. I mean, there was so much evidence saying that I didn't do it, and yet this prosecutor was able to beat that.
So how was he able to beat it? He somehow, I know that it was a hung jury.
Yeah.
And I think what I know, when I read, it said that he threatened them that they were going to have to spend the night if they didn't come up with the.
Well, the deciding moment in that trial. So the jury's looking at me, and I'm looking at them, and you could feel it in the courtroom. Everything's going great. I ain't got nothing to worry about. And here it was. The judge allowed the prosecutor to make this statement. Why is Curtis even here? And she brought up that I was arrested for buying that $20 of rock cocaine. And soon as that was entered into the trial, the jurors quit looking at me. And I remember my defense attorney saying to me, we're going to lose. Wow. It changed the whole courtroom.
Yeah. And that's the problem that we have in our traditional system, is because if you don't have a proper representation, because someone should have said objection or something, he should have never been able to say that in that courtroom. Even the judge should have said erase that, or but our system is so broken that they allowed that, and for you're thinking that's no big deal. So what? Because I know I didn't do it. But for them, he had alternative motive, and that was to win this jury, to make them vote that you were guilty.
Yeah. And it wasn't a big leap for them. Well, if he's a drug user, I mean, he could have done this. So it wasn't a big leap. And yeah, they were hung. The judge denied a hung jury. And when they came back and said guilty, I just could not. I couldn't believe it. I didn't think it happened in America. I didn't. I never believed when inmates say, "Oh, I didn't do it. I'm in here for a crime I didn't commit." I never believed that. They're all liars.
Right. So what happened then?
Then I went to prison. They sentenced me to 9 years in prison. So I ended up doing 5. So yeah, and here's why I like to make a statement. And here was very important. What happened to me, why I ended up back in prison. There's one thing to be an inmate. It's a whole different thing to be treated as an inmate. And let me qualify that statement. Here's what I mean. My wife at that time and my in-laws knew 100% I was innocent. But when I got released after those 5 years, I was treated as an inmate. My name was taken off our home. My name was taken off our checking and savings account. I wasn't afforded they owned a plumbing company. They weren't allowing me to have the car keys no more. And it was just these subtle things that all of a sudden they were treating me different as an inmate.
And you said in your book, you said as a white inmate is like a black person out in the world, or something you made a phrase. You remember that phrase?
I don't remember it word for word, but I thought being a white, this is white America. And that as a white man, I've always been used to a certain level of privilege coming with my skin color. And then when that doesn't happen, it's a shock to my system that while I'm white, I think I was treated as a black.
Well, at that time, the 3 strikes was really, actually, I believe, this is my personal opinion, was designed for black people and to get them incarcerated on petty crimes. And so, but you got caught up because that thing came out and it just started and they didn't know how to deal with it. Because first of all, this should have been, even if it was 3 strikes, it should have been a violent, it should have been, what was the way that they named it?
Well, here's what a lot of society doesn't realize what they did. So what they did when they arrested me for the crime I didn't do, it was a serious felony. Serious. Right. So now here comes 3 strikes. And so what they did is now they changed the penal code to read that any robbery is no longer serious. They're all violent. So they went back into my record and now changed it from what was a serious crime now to a violent.
Even though you didn't have a gun or any weapon?
No weapon, no gun, no nothing. Never have touched a person. Never shot a gun in my life. Still haven't today. And yet they had to be labeled as, and my counselor at San Quentin told me, she says, you are in writing one of the most violent felons in this prison.
So now you with the murderers and the killers, and just like just like you killed somebody.
Actually, I remember making the statement that I wish I would have got time as a murderer instead of a 3-striker. And murderers were getting credit and doing a lot less time than a person who commits 3 strikes.
Yeah, because if you was a murderer, you would have been able to, even if they given you 25 years, you probably would have done 21 years. But as 3 strikes, you have to do 100% of the time.
Yes. No matter how good or how bad you are, it's 50 years.
Now, let me kind of fast forward, because I want to really tell your story, and I want you to really talk about your book and what made you write this book. And I think the thing that really got you, when the first offense happened, 3 strikes wasn't even in existence right yet. So
No.
then, then you got accused for something that you did not do. And then your in-laws had I guess a cabin or something, and they were going to sell it, and they gave you the keys, and they told you that they wanted you to watch it and make sure that the lights was on and everything. And so you started getting high, and you started going over there, and so I guess they was trying to get over on the insurance company. So they tried to say that they said that you stole a television, you stole cameras, you broke into the place. How do you break into place when you have keys? So that went into your 3rd strike. Is that correct?
Yeah. So yeah, the cabin was up for sale. It had, one of those lock boxes on the door. I had a key. I was supposed to keep the cabin warm for potential buyers, and I was supposed to keep the walkways clear of snow. That was what I was supposed to do. So anyway, I was doing that, but I was also going over there and getting high. Nobody was there. The cabin's been vacant for months, and that's where I was at. And yeah, I opened the door to give them an opportunity to bury me, and they did. So the charge I learned later on, which I did not know initially, even in the courtroom, the charge ended up being 1st-degree burglary. And the reason why they gave me 1st-degree burglary and not 2nd-degree burglary, because 1st-degree burglary was a strikeable offense, where 2nd-degree burglary was not a strikeable offense. So that's why they put it in writing as a 1st-degree burglary, which a 1st-degree burglary is this: you broke into somebody's home, they were home, and you did it at night. That's 1st degree. 2nd degree is nobody's there, it's vacant, it's an empty house, and you broke in and you stole stuff. Big difference.
It's a huge difference. And so now here you are, you're in this situation where you're facing 50 years, and you're going to these different prisons. You've never been in prison before. You got gangs, you got some of the most notorious, criminals in the world. I mean, you talked about going to Solitad, you went to Lancaster, these are major prisons that you were in. So kind of tell me, how did you survive through that? Because when I read your book, for me, the title was Survival.
Hey, if you don't mind, Dr. P, I just want to back up a little bit because I want your listeners to know that even in the face of 50 years, I told the truth. I pled guilty. I told the judge I stole the $40. I did that. At the same time, which is a very important factor, is that at that point, I made an agreement with my wife. I said, hey, look, you could have the house, you could have the cars, you could have it all. Just don't keep my child from me. She says, Curtis, I would never do that. So, so the same week I got 50 years to life, I got divorce papers. It was all in a matter of 6 days.
Mm.
So with that, now I'm being sent to prison. One of the very first 3 strikers to ever hit the prisons. They didn't know how to receive somebody. They're used to murderers comes in with 25 to life. You know, they didn't realize 50 years to life. What do we do with these guys? So that's how I was received into the prison system. And I want to tell you about day one. Day one, I'm in my cell. These whites, they're called NLRs. They're called Nazi lowriders. So the whites, these 2 guys, NLRs, come to my cell door. There's me and there's my cellie at that point. He had, I think he had a life sentence as well. He was 19 years old. I was a little bit older at that point. And they said, hey, you guys got to put some work in and we're going to look out for you guys. There's a child molester over there. Here's a knife. You need to go stab him. This is my day one. So I say, I ain't doing it. I'm not doing it. But the 19-year-old says, give me the knife. I'll go stab the child molester. So he does it. He goes off to the hole. Me, now I'm in the prison, and now these whites are starting to point at me. That's him. That's him. That's him. And so I wait in my, I don't know where this came from. I wait for the shot caller of the whites. That's the gang leader. I wait for him to get in the shower. And when he jumps in the shower, I jump in behind him. I got my full clothes on. I got my prison boots on. And I'm yelling at this dude. Don't you ever point at me in the chow hall. You got something to say to me, you say it to my face. He's like, you're crazy. I said, you're damn right. I said, I got 50 years and you ain't going to tell me how to do my 50 years. So he spread the word on the yard that dude's crazy. Leave him alone. And it worked.
So now you have a reputation because that you're considered crazy, and they pretty much left you alone. But then you had some other issues. To kind of walk us through some of the other issues that you had to experience there after that.
Well, I mean, actually, before I left that yard, that shot caller ended up shaking my hand.
I remember you said that he respected you.
He did. He says, you know, you walk your walk. One thing about convicts, they hate a fake. They hate a fraud. Don't play both sides. You know, if you're with us, you're with us. If you're not, then you're out. But don't try to half step this because we're watching you. But anyway, he shook my hand, you know. But I'm not sure what you're referring to at what prison.
Yeah, well, what prison was that?
That was actually at Tehachapi.
And now, and during this time, before you had gotten married, because the way, kind of talk about how you got married.
I didn't get married in prison.
No, I know, but you got married before because you came to learn to know the Lord. Is that correct?
I came to know the Lord when I actually went looking for my father after high school. Right after high school, I went looking for my father. I wanted to confront him. This is back in 1980. And so I knew the city he lived in. I knew where he worked, but I didn't know his home address. And I ended up, this girl, I seen this beautiful girl and she invited me to church. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm young and I'll do anything. At this point,
right?
I just wanted the girl. And next thing you know, I remember sitting at church and I'm at the altar and they're giving an altar call and I'm giving my life to Jesus Christ. And
well, the reason I brought that up was because at that point in your book, it said that was the most that you ever felt free in your life. And then it seemed like all hell broke loose.
You got that right.
And now you're cursing God and you're trying to figure out what is going on. And so kind of walk me through that.
Well, I think the worst stage of where I really had an issue with God is when I was in prison. And if you don't mind,
Mm-hmm.
I had just gotten raped in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, you know, on top of having no mom and dad, and my wife is gone, and I got 50 years to life, and my child's been taken from me, and now I just been raped. And the prison's response to me being raped is to put me in the hole. And I said, okay, God. I threw my Bible away. I wanted nothing more to do with God. I swore he hated me. I was a target of his wrath. And I figured, you know what? My parents didn't want me. You don't want me. I don't want me. And then I started attempting suicide.
So you were in a meeting, and I guess with a psychologist in a group, and then you finally broke and your silence, because you never told anybody, and you finally broke your silence, and she said, I'm going to have to report that.
Yeah, I didn't know that about when free staff, when people, volunteers come into the prison, we call them free staff. So when the free staff were in a group, and it happened to have been a year to the day that I was raped, and I'm the last one to speak, and all these guys are talking about this, that, and the other, and finally gets to me, and she's like, well, what's going on with you, Curtis? And it just broke. The floodgates broke, and I just said it. I said, a year ago today, I was raped. And that's when she said, I have to report this. And next thing you know, the cops are putting handcuffs on me and throwing me in the hole. And
which
yeah.
I thought was real ironic, because you are the victim and they put handcuffs on you, and then they put you in the hole for several weeks.
16 days.
Yeah. And you just, and then they tried to say that there was no proof, you know.
Yeah. So when they put me in the hole, they stripped me of all my clothes and put this little jump outfit on me. And after 16 days of investigating this, they said, we have no evidence that a rape took place. Mind you, it's a year later, but that's what they say. And I said to them, I said, well, then how do you get it out of here? How do you undo this? And, you know, Dr. P, there was something that was very, you know, God is really into the details. And this was so instrumental in helping me survive. I was taking an English 99 A or B class at San Quentin. And one of the homework assignments they gave us was to read a book, and we had to write a book report on it. And so I was reading a book on this missionary, and she went to Kenya. And while she's at Kenya, she was raped. And here's what she says. She says, that's a small price to pay to show God's love. And Dr. P, those words, I remember when the whites had come to me and they wanted to give me a knife again. They said, you got to fight for your manhood. You got to go stab that rapist. I said, I ain't doing it. Then they said, okay, we know what you're about. You're a Christian. Just give us his name. We'll take him out. I couldn't do it.
And so you didn't give up, you didn't give his name or anything, because you just didn't want that you didn't want that blood to be on you.
No. And you know, Dr. P, if I would have, even though I'm free behind prison walls, I still would have been in a prison of my own making,
Mm-hmm.
and I would have known it.
You know, I just want to just break for a minute and just commend you, one, for your transparency and your openness. I mean, this got to be hard for you to even talk about. And I know you've been through this and you've written this. I mean, I couldn't even write. I couldn't put the book down, man. I read it all in one setting, man. I did. It's 180 some pages, but I mean, because I mean, I knew you, but I didn't know your entire story. You know, when I saw you in San Quentin, and you were probably at the chapel times that I preached. Because I saw when you said that you were at the chapel, and I'm like, well, I preached there, so he had to be there when I preached because you were one of the regular people that attended the church. I didn't know that. You know what I mean? And so I just want to commend you because God has kept you, man. I mean, I know you wanted to commit suicide and you thought about it. I mean, even I read in the, that you were trying to do it and the guard came in and you said, don't worry, I'm not suicidal. I'm just trying to figure out how to do it, but it was in your mind because of the hurt and the pain and the rejection and the the just not feeling accepted from your mother and your father, and then go to prison, you get the same thing that you said it reminded you of your brother because of the abuse from your brother.
Two things I want to say real fast, if you don't mind, and
Go
then
ahead.
if it's
Yes.
okay, if I could
Yes.
take a 30-second break, because this is hard for me to talk about.
Absolutely. Take your time.
I want to say this, that the rapist reminded me of my brother, and when the doctor ended up molesting me, that reminded me of my father. And in both situations, I remember saying, "Did I please you?" And in both situations, they said yes. But you know what I found out by that was that even though I was pleasing sexually, my mom and dad didn't come back. It didn't bring my family back. And I got to learn that in those sick, disgusting situations. I got to learn that that was a lie that I was telling myself, that if I was this perfect person, sexually or ever how, that my family would come back.
Yeah. And we didn't even talk about the doctor.
Yeah.
Tell them what happened. What happened with the doctor? I think you went in.
Yeah, he examined me, and he just there was something about me that he decided, to fondle me, and for some reason, I knew that this was what he wanted. It was something that was important to him. But so I got to come back a week later, and I remember there was a part of me that was really wanting just to please him, and I did. I did, and so.
Yeah, you said something that you felt dirty because of this situation, and so you cut all your pubic hairs, and you think that was probably a turn on to this doctor.
Anything that reminded me of being male, I want to change. Because my belief of males was very skewed.
Right. So now you just to fast forward, because we only have like maybe 15 minutes. I don't want to fast forward too fast, but I want to talk about, you started a diary. You wanted to reach out and find your daughter, and you reached out to the Salvation Army. You had to pay $50, trying to figure out, how am I going to do this? You finally came up with the $50, and it was really up to your ex-wife whether she wanted to accept or wanted to speak to you, and she denied it, which was your gateway to your daughter. And now you still, even though she made you this promise that she would never stop you from seeing your daughter, and that you would have this visit 1 year. So you started writing a diary and writing letters. Kind of talk about that.
Well, the diary started long before that, to be honest with you. And I didn't want my daughter growing up the way I grew up, always having this question, what was it about me why my parents didn't want me? So I didn't want my daughter to have that same question. So I thought that I would write these diaries, and that these diaries somehow, once I was killed in prison, would find their way to my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I believed. So I kept writing these diaries. But then after a while, I learned about the Salvation Army thing, and they won't search for a minor, which I learned on this journey. They'd only search for an adult. And that's when my ex-wife said, no way, don't give him no information about me. So, but I kept writing these diaries. So the story for these diaries can be heard on this Ear Hustle podcast, if you don't mind. So my stories from season 1 on this Ear Hustle podcast is titled Left Behind. They really speak in more depth about the diaries, where the book is able to talk more even further about the diaries. So I wanted this from my daughter. I want these diaries to go to my daughter, and should I say? So year after year after year after year after year after year, I'm writing these diaries, and so these cops are coming in and tearing apart my cell, and the diaries are getting messed up, and so along this journey, I receive a pen pal, just a pen pal, and they lived 2 states away. They lived in Seattle, Washington, or close to it. And they said, oh, we're just going to be a pen pal. Don't ask for money. Don't ask for packages. No visits. No nothing. But I asked them. I said, hey, it was a husband and wife. And I said, would you guys be so kind to hold on to my diaries? Because these cops are tearing them up. So they prayed about it, thought about it, and they said, sure, we'll hold on to your diaries. Well, God is in the details. Not knowing that was where they were holding the diaries, where my daughter ended up being. Where my ex-wife hid her all these years. And just right there in the very next city to where these diaries were being held, there was my daughter. And the woman who was holding the diaries she was a substitute teacher, and she asked one of the little boy and said, hey, do you happen to know, my daughter's name is Christiana. Do you happen to know Christiana? And the little boy says, yeah, she works right over there. And it was just.
Wow. I mean, what is that? I mean, that's just God, man. You go from a pen pal to a person that was able to, reach your daughter and ask your daughter, does she have a father in prison? And then she writes you a letter. So then what?
Well, we got to correspond briefly. Her mother was giving her such a hard time about me, and the last thing I wanted to do was cause any more pain to my daughter. And so I said, hey, look, when you're, where I'm at. I'm here in San Quentin prison. I'm here for the rest of my life. So when you're ready, I'm here. And so we had broke off communication again. And but this time it was different because she knew now, and she had part of the diaries. And so it was okay. And not knowing that, God had a lot of a lot in the mix still here. Before I knew it, next thing you know, that there's Governor Jerry Brown is learning about my story, and Stanford Law comes in and really helps out with bringing some the truth about the crime. I didn't get it. It took 27 years, but the truth came out. Governor Jerry Brown is fighting for my release, and he gets approval from the California Supreme Court. And on Christmas Eve of 2018, the governor's office calls San Quentin and says, bring Curtis into the warden's office. We're releasing him. And I got released 5 days later, December 31st, 2018. I don't know how much time we got, but I do want to say this before we get cut off.
Go ahead.
About 3 weeks ago, I got to hold my daughter for the first time in 30 years.
Praise God. That's what I was going to ask you. Praise God.
She came to one of my talks. I gave a talk in Seattle, Washington, and she came. And it was like three minutes before I'm supposed to go up and talk.
Oh.
And the lady who's holding my diaries all these times, she's the one that put the talk together. And she said, Curtis, will you come here for a second? And she had me step through the door. There was my child.
I'm so happy for you, Curtis. I'm so happy for you, man. Because I know for a while you guys stopped writing each other. And that's what I was going to ask you was, how did that end up? Because you said that, you know, you guys were going back and forth and then it stopped. So I'm so glad to hear that you were able to hold her. And I'm sure you had a conversation with her afterwards. Kind of tell me about that.
Well, you know, there's the Bible verse that says that God will do exceedingly abundantly above all that you can ask or even think. And you know that
according to the power that worketh in you. Don't forget that part.
Thank you. And so not only did that day did I get my daughter, and to hear her call me dad for the first time in 30 years, while I'm holding her, I got to meet my 3 grandchildren.
Oh wow!
That day too, and to hear 2 of them call me grandpa was
wonderful. I'm so glad, man. You know, and the reason, Curtis, that I said, and the power, you know, it says exceedingly and abundantly above more than you can ever ask or think, according to the power that worketh in you. There is tremendous power that was working in you that you didn't know was working in you. You know,
I heard this line and it said, when you thought you were buried, you were planted. You weren't buried, you were planted.
Yes.
I was planted. I was the seed that God planted.
Yes. And to change this traditional system and to change this way that, you know, they're doing people, you are in the process and a part of that history of tearing that apart. I heard you say that, you know, you all were watching the voting, even though you could not vote. You know, you could not vote. You still had an opportunity to hear the vote, and you all were in prison, and you were all listening to the verdict.
Mm-hmm.
And you are part of that history, man. You know,
I didn't really believe in the where there was racial injustice. I was never believing in that before prison, but now being in prison, and I got to really see it. And I agree with you, Dr. P, that 3 strikes was created to lock up a lot of people of color. And but look at the wisdom of God. The wisdom of God will use a white face to show white America the injustice of this law. And he used the $40 that I stole, but a lot of people got released behind that.
Mhm.
My case brought on so much attention
Mhm.
between the podcast and now the governor releasing this and now the book, and a lot of people got released behind what was done to this.
Yes. Yes.
That was the hand of God in that.
What the enemy meant for evil, God turned it into good.
Yes.
And I'm so proud of you, man. I know this is not an easy conversation. I know this hasn't been an easy journey, but I've been following you. You wrote a really good book. One of the things that I read, I want to read this because you wrote "Sentence to Life, Come Again." You remember that? It says, "Darkness looms as the heavy steel door of freedom slams shut.
Oh,
Spring now gone. Picnics,
oh,
child's laughter, hugs. Won't you come again? Smiles turned upside down. Handcuffs replace bracelets. Beach walks and talks have become a faded memory. Or was it ever real? Sweet nothings are now roars from mean cops. Bullies are back. Suicide resides yet again within these jeans. Metal keys are louder than was the neighbor's barking dog. Traffic has become 800 lifeless men walking aimlessly. Food has become slop. Sex is gone. Privacy gone. Sleeping is now in a cage. Cell phones, emails, blogs, iPods, Blackberries, computers, high tech, low tech, hackers, perverted attackers. All of you, I never knew you. Love, cute little touches, female smiles, hugs, and tenderness as a child to his favorite toy or cartoon. Am I to mommy? When I read that, it got me, man. I said if I didn't really read anything, I had to read that because it says it all. And I just can't wait to see what God has for you moving forward and with this book and how uh, even speaking to young people about decisions and how a bad decision can cost you dearly your life and your freedom, you know, not really thinking, that it would cost you all of that, but it wasn't your fault because you started off with a disadvantage, man. You started off with, not having a mother that loved you, not having a father. The father who should have been protecting you was the one who abused you. And the fact that you're still in your right mind, Curtis, that you still have sanity, that the fact that you still smile and that you're able to go out and proclaim the gospel is a testimony, man, and a testament of God's grace and mercy. And I salute you, man, and I mean that. I salute you. Thank you so much, man, for sharing your story. Uh, talk to the people, let them know how they can purchase your book because this is a wonderful book that I think that people need to hear.
on Amazon. It's on Amazon.
So the book is called Sentence to Life: The Path to Redemption and Freedom. The author is Curtis Roberts, and you can purchase this book on Amazon. Um, and then I would love to have you back to talk about those diaries if you want. If not, they can look and you can tell them to go to Ear Hustle. It's up to you.
Well, no. Let's talk about the diaries. Yes.
Okay, so we'll have another time, and I'll have you come
Yeah.
back, and we'll just talk about the diaries because that is a very important part. I'm sorry we ran out of time, but we're gonna talk about that, and it's gonna be soon because I think the listeners would love to hear that because it's a success story, and your daughter didn't ask for her mother or father, and she should not be, to the place where she can't see you or be a
Yeah.
part of your life, because whatever you did, you're still her father, you know, and she still loves you. And I saw that when you said that she wrote in that thing, she put all those hearts, and she was like, these are 100 things about me. And one thing I need you to know is I love you, daddy, you know.
Yeah. Well,
So,
thank you.
so tell me, what do you have planned, man? What's next on your agenda?
Uh, well, right now I'm doing speaking engagements. I'm speaking to Stanford on Monday. So I have a lot of speaking engagements here in Illinois, where I'm from, and we're moving forward. So we'll see where it goes. So
Well, for the listeners, because we're going across the water, so we are, 150, I think, countries. So when he says Stanford, he's talking about Stanford University, uh,
Stanford.
and he has an opportunity. And I'd love for you to send me that information because I like to come and listen to it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly where Stanford is. You tell me the date and time.
Yeah.
If I'm available, I would sure like to come out and support you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well,
And
thank.
then go ahead.
No, I'm just saying thank you.
Thank you, Curtis, and God bless you, man. And I'm so glad to hear that you were able to see your daughter, man. That blessed my heart, because that was the thing that I was thinking about, and I was wondering. I said, "Wow, I gotta hear this. Where did it end with your
Yeah.
daughter?" And that just blessed my heart, man. That ended my day with a smile.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you heard another show here on Can We Have a Conversation? Our guest today was Curtis Roberts. Sentenced to Life is his book. And until the next time, we will see you next Thursday,
I'll be
same
right.
place, same time. God bless you.
Be right back.